Welcome.
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 To celebrate.
To celebrate.
Polly.
Welcome to Celebrate Story.
With my mom.
My mom.
It's my mom.
With my mom.
With my wife.
Julie Wagner.
Julie Wagner.
Julie Wagner.
Julie Wagner.
Here we go, kicking off another round of podcasts together here. So swim team is over. We've wrapped that up. And you've gone and overcommitted to being a cheer coach.
Yeah, once again, I've done that. Wait, I'm not a cheer coach.
I'm the cheer coach. I just had to slip that in.
Gotcha.
I'm the cheer coach. So in between cheer coaching, I hope to bring a few episodes this late summer, early fall. And today's episode is about conflict. I am so excited to talk about conflict. I am ready.
Who wouldn't be?
You wouldn't be. As an Enneagram 9, you wouldn't be excited, would you? Are you excited?
We'll see.
So why are you here, Stephen?
It's my bedroom.
Now, why would an Enneagram 9 want to come to an episode and talk about conflict?
I'm also a people pleaser.
You're a people pleaser.
So I'm here for you.
And I'm your main people?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Well, why I'm here is because I had some surprising moments that changed the way I thought about conflict during swim team season. And I'm here for it. I'm so wanted to take off my shoes and kiss the ground here for it. I think I concluded a number of years ago that the only people you can have a conflict with are the people married to you or living underneath your roof. And I don't know what you think about, dear listener, conflict, but that was just kind of what I decided. I was like, that's the only safe space to have a conflict, because I think that was rooted so much in my fear of someone not showing up to the conflict. It was just easier to people please. So I thought in this episode, we could go back and you and I could start and we could talk about what was conflict like growing up? Not a 6-hour session or anything, but just the grand summary of what we walked away with from childhood about conflict, each of us, because that absolutely shapes our thoughts and our assumptions and our expectations about conflict. And then I could share some of those just beautiful stories of the gifts of conflict that I had during swim team season. And then we could see where that goes. What do you think?
Sounds good.
Okay, so starting off, conflict growing up in my home. What was that like? I don't have a lot of memories, but I have feelings of what I remember. And I do know that it's my dad was going to win every conflict, period, or you were going to go out going against him. So I think I developed some of the people-pleasing side of conflict. Early in childhood, because he was just a my way or the highway type of person. He could bring a lot of fun, but he brought a lot of demands. And my parents definitely had a ongoing, unresolved conflict, it seemed, a lot of my childhood. And my mom and dad handled that in two very different ways. My dad was very direct about that. Softened as he got older and before he died. And then my mom was very indirect about that. And as an adult, one of the things I'm learning my default is to be indirect. And so it's a lot of growth for me to directly confront something. And I definitely have, I think this goes to attachment styles, but I have a ton of anxiety if I can't resolve a conflict. It's if someone won't meet me at the fence, it is due to my own unacknowledged and unhealed wounds. It's a tremendously powerful and difficult experience for me if someone won't meet me at the fence. And I think that's why a number of years ago I decided it is not worth it. You just don't know. And so I had the most surprising conflicts over swim season that truly ended up being tremendous gifts to me. So anyways, I kind of started jumping into that, but I want to hear about how you would summarize for our listeners your impression about conflict growing up.
I was conflict adverse when I was a kid, and I'm conflict adverse now a lot. The conflict that I remember seeing most was between my dad and a couple of my siblings. And I think from a young age, I kind of realized either consciously or subconsciously that I didn't want to be a part of that. So I just kind of kept to myself and pleased and did whatever it took to stay out of conflict. And I never really saw my parents like fight. Like, I'm sure they did, but it wasn't done publicly. So
I
didn't have a whole lot of examples of. I saw some examples of what I would consider unhealthy conflict. I don't think I saw a lot of examples of healthy conflict.
Same for me. And I think when you said that you saw some of the combative things, I definitely saw that too. It was like, as the youngest child, I saw, like a couple of my siblings were like, yes, we're going to obey everything dad says. And a couple were like, heck no, we're not going to do any of that. And so I saw when they did decide to go a different way, a lot of conflict over that. And I think I looked at peace as something that I had to swallow my own needs and submit to who's ever in charge. It's like, and then that would be the good thing to do. And I think it's really been what has gone on between you and I. I mean, you and I have been very open about, we realized, goodness, I guess it's been a couple years now that after a year in marriage therapy, we realized, okay, we don't have a communications problem. We have an unresolved childhood trauma problem. And we'll get more to that later. But I think for me, those patterns I learned in childhood of stuffing it and keeping the peace. And you just said the same thing. You learned to just keep the peace. That it's like at some point that doesn't work. At some point that backfires in a massive way. And so it's like over the last few years, there's been so much intentional work, both of us individually and together, on getting in touch with our needs and our feelings and being more direct and coming to the table with what our needs and feelings are. And what was interesting to me about what happened with swim team is this was like a chance to practice these skills in an area that I'd kind of sworn off. I'd sworn off wanting to deal with any conflict outside of the home, really truly in fear. It's like, it's not worth losing. I remember telling to a very dear friend of mine who's an Enneagram 8, I'm like, I've just decided I will never have a conflict with anyone outside of my home. Like it's just not worth losing the relationship over. And she really tried to challenge me in that and thought that was like, she thought differently about that. And I still remember that conversation, and it's like, nope, swearing all that off. And there's nothing like the intensity of swim team that helped me eat those words for sure. So let me dive right in. I'm not going to be able to break down. I mean, this is only going to be a 30-minute episode. I'm not going to be able to break down all three, but there's definitely something. I love the intensity of a project that's all consuming. And if there's going to be an all-consuming project or an intensity, there's going to be intimacy. And if there's intimacy, there will be conflict. And one of the things I love about you, Steve, is that you help me see both sides. This happens.
I thought that annoyed you.
It does too. It does both.
Gotcha.
I love it about you, and it annoys me. Mm-hmm. It depends if you're...
Depends on what side
if
I'm on.
my side has been repressed, I really appreciate your ability to see both sides. No, it's both. I have a love, an admiration, and a frustration. I mean, that's something I'd love the listeners to hear, because it's like, if you haven't done Enneagram exploration, you have to know an Enneagram 9, they are the peacemaker, and they are always looking at all sides of an issue. And with a family of 10 people, what is it that your friend Nick said? I mean, he's like a stats guy. He said about the family of 10 when we were in Maryland, and I was lamenting to this guy, Nick, who's like a statistician and or manages numbers and data and analyzes risk. That's what it is. He's not a statistician. I'm sorry. He analyzes risk with numbers. And he says lots of things that I don't fully understand, but I find it fascinating to hear him talk, because I was lamenting to him about like, oh yeah, there's always someone fighting, and like the perfectionist in me was like, and I'm trying this and I'm trying that, and I'm like trying to give him all these things that I'm doing to try to make it better. And he's like, I got news for you. as far as the numbers go, when it comes to managing risk, by the sheer number of people that you have in your house, like you just have to give into the fact that there will always be a conflict, because what is that? Like one person can fight with 9 people. Well, there's 10 people. So there's a potential of just
exponential.
Yes, yeah. Exponential. I mean, each person can fight with 9 people, and then
multiple people can fight with multiple.
Yeah,
people.
Then there could be like a 3-on-1 or a 2-on-3 or a what's the worst is when it's 8 against us. No, I'm just kidding. I don't think that's actually ever happened. I hope.
Because Boaz isn't old enough yet.
Yeah, Boaz is going to lead.
He's going to take your side at this point.
He's gonna. But what he was saying was like mathematically, there's going to always be a conflict, and I couldn't decide if this depressed me or encouraged me. But I thought it was really interesting because it definitely poked a hole in like the never-ending perfectionism that I have, because I always think, well, I could say the right thing or do the right thing or grow in the right space, and we could start eliminating some of these conflicts, but they're just inevitable. They're inevitable. Like if you're going to be in an intimate relationship, there's going to be conflict. And so I just thought that was really interesting to reflect on. But getting back to, I kind of like went off on a tangent there, big surprise. Getting back to what I love about you is that, you know, when we have these things, when we have these issues that are like not the easy to solve issues or the easy to get back on track issues, it's like Steve is a mastermind at his best at being able to like get to the heart of the matter strategically and concisely and peacefully. And it's like, I can get so lost in my feels in it. It's like, I can't think straight. So anyways, I thought that was fun to share because y'all, we have quite a bit of practice doing it wrong and quite a bit of practice of sometimes falling forward in it, of negotiating and navigating conflict. And I'm here for it. I just want to keep learning and keep growing. I think one of the most invaluable tools for me has been, I've talked about it in another podcast episode. We can link it in the show notes. Nonviolent communication. Nonviolent communication has been one of the greatest tools because it taught me that it's my responsibility to get in touch with my needs and my feelings and not put those on others. And that's helped me fumble my way leading my kids through those things too, because we live in a culture that likes to make some people good and some people bad, which is oftentimes scapegoating the responsibility of getting in touch with our own needs and feelings. So that just makes the conflict so messy because we're blaming others for how we feel rather than taking responsibility. So, and that'll be something I'll be practicing the rest of my life. That is hard work.
Yeah, one of my most common questions I've been asking, and I ask it of myself, but I'm asking it of the kids a lot, is who can you control? Like the only person in a conflict that you can control is you and how you react. And
yes. And I've read in, I guess it was in Nonviolent Communication, that it's like cultures that don't do as much of like these people are good and these people are bad, that are better in touch with their needs and feelings, have less violent cultures. And like, it's no surprise that it's like we live in such a violent culture communication wise. And it feels like that all of us could underestimate the work we do at home with our brothers and our sisters and our moms and our dads and our HOA president. Like that is the work. Like if we want communities that are more peaceful, it starts with like who's literally at our kitchen table or who's literally running a swim team with us and those kinds of things. So though I didn't do it perfectly, I'm eternally grateful. It sounds dramatic or exaggerative, but I mean it to my core. I'm eternally grateful for the people during the swim team season that showed up to the fence with the conflict with me, because I learned things about myself that I could have learned no other way. So let's jump right into the first one. So the first one was with the HOA president, who's now become a dear friend of mine. Like, in fact, I was on a run this morning And I went past his house, and we have this joke because we're both like recovering people pleasers of we're twins separated at birth. Never mind that we're like 5 years apart, but we're just sure we're twins separated at birth. And I have a lot of fun joking around with this guy. And when the season started, I will totally own, he has a ton of responsibilities to manage the budget of a neighborhood where there's always going to be someone complaining within any neighborhood, right? And then I have the responsibility of running the swim team. And, we started out first meeting of the year. I mean, we both had sunglasses on. We weren't talking. We both had our own needs and our own assumptions. And it ended up in a meeting where both of us just kind of walked off. And it's like, oh, I do not want to do another swim season where this is happening like this. And I'm trying to remember the steps that ended up happening. And I'm trying to think of how to summarize these big things into a small bite-size conversation. But what ended up happening is through 2, 3, 4 conversations, we both showed up to the conversation. And I realized that I was making some assumptions that I had not even questioned, as so did he. And it's like he came to the table with a disarming humility and curiosity and a level of apology that truly like disarmed me. And so we ended up working through the negotiation of some of the ways that the swim team would use the pool and some of the things that the HOA needed from us. And it's like all the details don't matter, but I think what does matter and what I never want to forget is the fact that he gave the gift of showing up to the fence. Because for me, I wanted to sweep it under the rug and be a martyr and just run away. But he made the call. He made the call and reached out, started with gratitude for what I was doing for the swim team, and address the situation. And I'd like to say, oh, that just solved everything and we were just done. But we actually ended up having, I don't even know how many now. Now I feel much more confident when we're going to have a place of tension between the two of us. But I think we ended up having like 3 or 4 more of those situations and have really grown a lot because I see for him and I, where the tension is. It's like when there comes to be a tension between two values of like opening up the gate and trusting everyone and welcoming everyone in that value is so high for me. And the value for him of safety and security is so high. And it's like those two things are going to have a tension and they're going to have, they're going to push up against each other. And I just can't quite put it into words how much I appreciate the fact that he's willing to come to the fence and let us kind of press against those things together as we do community together. So that was the number one conflict that started off the season. There was another one with a mom that she was absolutely shocked that we did not have lifeguards during the preseason of swim team. And through a number of different texts and emails, it came to a head and it got emotional. And she too came to the fence, and I'm using fence as like metaphorical, and wanted to talk about it with a disarming humility. And so it's like, are you kidding? There's 2 people that I would have normally just stuffed all my emotions, had all my opinions, and moved on about my day. And here comes another person. I mean, we both ended up that night at the pool in tears and talking about sort of where our assumptions were and the other one's communication, and apologies for kind of the way we came across and like unpacking all those misunderstandings. And I think the mysterious part for me on that one is she used a phrase to me. She said, I fear I've burned a bridge with you before I ever even had a chance to build one. Y'all, this unraveled me. This unraveled me. Because see, a number of years ago when I was trying my best to be direct and try to take care of some things that were kind of getting out of hand in a situation at our old church, I ended up being called, actually on my 40th birthday, a bridge burner and a bad Christian. And that has been an opportunity for growth like you wouldn't believe. Because it's like, am I going to take this insult and believe it? Or am I going to dig deep enough to know who I am? And so the fact that she would use those words in a positive way was such a healing moment and such a disarming moment. So long story short, like I ended up having a tighter bond with this mother, having had this 45-minute hard conversation about when the lifeguards would be on there, on duty, and kind of the missteps I made as she very directly called me out on them, but yet very humbly apologized for the way she came across. And it's like, we had this back and forth of, I'm sorry, and can I understand this? And there was curiosity, there was warmth, and there was a desire to build bridges. And of course I was undone when at the swim team party, she gave me a wrapped up gif of the Monet painting, The Bridge, and with a little Post-it that said, look, here's a bridge. And I thought, I don't know the right word, humbled, surprised, shocked, comforted by these people that were like willing to come to the fence, willing to be like, I'm hurt, I'm frustrated, I'm stressed. This is where I'm coming from. Where are you coming from? And it truly did blow me away, because I kind of put that in the space of only within my family could that happen, especially too in my own first family. It's like those things weren't directly confronted. So it's like, it's a foreign language that I'm only just beginning to speak. So those were the two. And the one that really, the big one that really, my son's girlfriend about swim teams, she said, nothing tears this family apart and then pulls it back together like swim team. She said it at the beginning of the season. I was like, oh no, not this season. Not this time. The perfectionist in me is like, I can organize this well enough. I can recruit enough volunteers. I can prevent the breaking apart. But sure enough, when preseason went to full season and we had a record number of swimmers. How many did we have this year, Steve? Do you remember? 80? Okay. 80 swimmers. We had 80 swimmers that were spread out over 2 hours and 5 lanes. And then we had to smush them all in to 2 lanes at a practice. So tension was high. Stress was high because we're getting weary at the end of the season. And it's like, we're also like probably all past our limits. Long story short, what I learned about myself that I could have learned no other way without screwing it up is like, in stress, I have this deep belief that it's all on me and I got to move fast. And so I made decisions fast and quickly and didn't circle back to coaches and directors and really kind of connect back with them. And of course, that blew up into like a day long, not constant, but there was tension amongst the coaches and myself.
Who are your kids?
Who are my kids? And so it's like, oh, this is so humbling, because it's like, I could get it right and like learn, not right. I could show up to the fence and learn and like have all this excitement about what I learned with my conflict with the HOA president and with this mom on the swim team, oh great, now we're kumbayaing together. But it's like, if I can't get this right with my own kids, see, do you hear the language here? Get this right. Do you see the recovering people, perfectionist that I am? But it's like, if I can't like show up and make progress here with the people that matter most to me, I mean, this felt like a big one, and it was a big one. And so long story short, we ended up working it out on that second day. Why are you smiling like that? Why are you smiling like that?
It's the third time you said long story short.
Could you edit that out?
I'll edit that out.
Okay. So anyways, the next day we ended up sitting around the table and doing the work, sharing where we were hurt, apologizing. Because again, I learned about myself, like that first night in conflict with them, my immediate response was just to kind of freeze and please. Oh, I'm sorry. Like, which that doesn't get anyone anywhere, because I haven't actually showed up with my whole self in that conversation. But all 3 of my teenagers and myself, we sat around that table around a lunch. There were some tears on my part and we got to it and we addressed it. And I can only speak for myself on that, but I'm so grateful they came to the fence. They came to the fence and cared enough about me to be direct enough about how they felt and how my actions impacted them. and I'm better for it. I'm stronger for it. I'm more aware. And it's like, wow, I could have never seen these things. In all 3 instances, I could have never seen these things about myself so clearly without having kind of fallen wrong in it, really not done it perfectly. And it's like, we learn far more about ourselves and each other in these spaces of conflict than we ever could when everything's going right. And I can't remember which therapist taught me this, but it's like, trust is actually built in repair. Trust is not built when everything's going well and everything's going perfect and everything's surfaced. Trust is built in the repair. Trust is built when people see, okay, now this is fallen apart. How are we going to get back together? And I just find that just really, really good news, because that means we don't have to always get it right, but that we can be committed to working on it and doing the work to keep the relationship first and showing respect and love and giving dignity to each other's needs and feelings and the whole thing. So those are the stories I wanted to share, and that bridges perfectly to what, Steve, I know you are dying to talk about. I know you are just here, just ready to talk about. But that's what leads us to wanting to talk about our
intensive.
You said that with such perfunctory enthusiasm.
Don't judge my enthusiasm.
I wasn't judging your
You
enthusiasm.
called it perfunctory.
I didn't say perfunctory was bad. Did I assign a value of perfunctory being bad?
When you hear a word like perfunctory, it's bad. Like, just, it doesn't flow off the tongue.
I think perfunctory can be good. I liked that you were committed to the task. So we're okay.
All right.
So we're going to talk about our intensive, but not this episode.
When are we going to talk about it?
Because you can't wait. You can't wait to
I know.
talk about your childhood trauma.
I can't.
And how that affected our marriage. So what we want to do is, we've thought about this for quite some time. We want to talk about what we learned in kind of a broad picture format.
What is an intensive?
What is an intensive? Great question, Steve. So an intensive is, so Steve and I did weekly counseling with a marriage therapist for almost a year. And it was far too many times that the call would end and she would say something like, trying to wrap it up all nice. And she'd be like, well, just keep in mind that it's just so great that you two love each other and trust each other. She would say something like that. That seems like a non-fight starting comment, right? Like that seems like bringing it all together. But somehow that would launch a what? How long of a fight? Like a 2-day fight after that? It'd be like one statement she was saying to try to like bring us back together, and y'all, the next 2 days would be like...
Yeah, we'd be on Zoom. So it'd be Julie and I in our bedroom talking to someone on Zoom. And she'd get us all worked up, thinking about our conflict and whatever's going on in our marriage, and then be like, oh, that's 50 minutes. See you guys later.
It's like we barely...
And then we just like the screen goes dark and we're sitting there staring at each other like,
what are we going to do?
What are we gonna do?
How are we going to function? Because we like to drag these things out for like 3 days, because when you have 8 kids, it's like, when will you get the chance to like seriously commit to using all these tools you've been learning? It's like, you can't just do that at any moment. You have to have time and space to do it. So sometimes it would take us days. And so it's like, it got to the point where we're like, we need something else.
A jump start.
Yeah. And I had actually been, because I'd like points for this, because it is all about points. I had been...
This was a 12-point suggestion.
Yes. I had been suggesting the intensive far sooner, which it makes sense now, all that we learned. Of course, I suggest something called an intensive. That's like my
anything intense.
Anything intense. I'm there for it, y'all. And so it makes sense that you wouldn't. Like in hindsight, it's like, of course I'd be all for it. And of course you'd be like, let's explore it. But I think after one too many of those weekly sessions that got us nowhere and actually put us in a worse position, it's like, okay, we've got to do the intensive. And so we did a all-day thing. Was it 9 a.m.? Is that what time we got there?
Something like that.
Something very early, 9 a.m. through, I think we went to 4. I think they typically end at 3, but y'all, we're overachievers. Actually, we just weren't done.
I think it was supposed to be 6 hours and we did 7, or it was
We
supposed to be
paid-
7 and we did 8 or something like that.
Yeah, we paid the extra hour to kind of finish it up. And we'd love to share about that whole process in a broad stroke way, not in a like totally weird, creepy way, but in a like, this is what we learned in some broad strokes and some appropriate thought out vulnerabilities. Did you like the way I changed my voice for that?
Yeah.
So we'd like to share about that. But the way we're going to do it too is because we also have been talking a lot about how we want to change the format of this podcast. So we're going to try something new. So this podcast you've listened to wherever you love to listen to podcasts. And if you want to hear part 2 of The Power of Conflict, you're going to have to join me on Marco Polo. I'm an ambassador of the app.
Ooh.
I know you're so impressed, which actually means nothing. It just means I'm a volunteer. But y'all, I love to volunteer. So, okay. But it's a free app. It's a free video exchanging app. And so what I will be doing is in August, there will be a date that Steve and I will be on Video Marco Polo and doing a sharecast that'll be about 30 to 45 minutes summarizing our intensive process that we did. And we will go through that. And we'll also take a little bit of questions at the end. And you'll be able to tune into this live on the Marco Polo, which is a free app, through this sharecast, or you will be able to just have it if you're not available at the time that we're living this sharecast. You'll be able to have it for later. So you can pay $10 to listen to it live or later. And so help us pay some college tuition and sign up. Did you like that, Steve?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like how I went right to the college tuition?
Mm-hmm.
And sign up for our live or later on The Power of Conflict, where we go the next level and invite you in to hearing about our 7-hour intensive and the work we've been doing since the intensive to apply kind of our homework from that session. So did I leave anything out, producer Steve?
Details will be forthcoming on all of that.
Forthcoming. What a great word.
Forthcoming.
So join us for The Power of Conflict, Marco Polo.